Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about navigating the twists and turns of life and embracing the imperfections of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches Catherine and Kirsty, and our mission is to support you in finding your own path, your own way, with greater clarity and self trust, no matter how messy or uncertain things may seem.
We address the roadblocks that come up time and time again for our coaching clients, from acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
As well as asking lots of questions, a coach's favourite thing to do, we'll be sharing thoughts and insights and offering plenty of tips, tools, and techniques for you to try.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect. And this week we've got a really interesting topic for you, which I think I can confidently say everyone must be able to relate to. It's this feeling of getting wound up. It happens to all of us. But we're going to talk a little bit more today about why it happens sometimes and others it just doesn't bother us. What's going on? And this was such a good idea, Kirsty. So thank you for bringing this up as an idea.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm wondering if there's some kind of Zen master out there somewhere who doesn't get wound up, but I think it must be really, really rare.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you were saying, okay. So I mean, the idea behind this episode was, how is it that on one day something goes wrong or annoys you, you just roll your eyes, probably use a few bad words, but you move on, it's forgotten. And yet on a different day, the same sort of thing will happen, and you'll spend hours beating yourself up or raging at the unfairness of life or the bad behavior of others, and it becomes massive. I
Yeah.
mean, WTAF? What is going on there? How can much the same thing have provoked such a different reaction at different times? And it's, these things that have that kind of inconsistently big effect on us are generally not big things themselves, are they? It's often not the dramatic stuff. I mean, if something big happens, you expect to have a big reaction to it. Fair enough. You're going to get wound up by the really windy uppy things. But when it's silly little things, just little things where anything isn't quite how we want it to be or isn't going the way we want it to, something we're doing or other people's behavior or circumstances beyond our control just trigger that completely out of proportion reaction.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's always a little sign of something though, isn't it? I spilled my tea this morning. You know, when you're in a hurry, so you're trying to do
yes.
it quicker than usual. And so I stirred it too quickly and I slopped it over the sides. Of course, I slowed
Oh,
myself down by trying to be quicker. And you just go, oh, for God's sake. Like it was such a plonker. But yeah, there are times when you just think, fine, wipe it up, move on. And other times you're just like, oh, yet another thing has just
yes.
gone wrong today. Ah.
Why am I so useless at this? Why am I so clumsy? Why did this happen? Why is it always me? Is that kind of huge flare up, isn't it? I mean, I was thinking of the kind of examples that bother me, and one very similar to the one you just given is when you've made a cup of coffee that you've been looking forward to, and then you realise you've let it go cold because you got distracted, and it makes you feel that the universe is somehow out to get you, or in the really silly thing, and I'm rather hoping I'm not the only one who does this. Sometimes when it takes a couple of attempts to actually be able to get your arm into the sleeve of the coat you've been putting on every day for months, and some days you just huff and get on with it, and other days it makes you feel like you're the clumsiest waste of space to have ever existed. I mean, and how about road rage? I mean, the silliest little thing that someone does, somebody pulls out in front of you a bit too abruptly. One day you just beep your horn or don't even, roll your eyes. Another, you're tailgating them and gesticulating and shouting obscenities out the window.
I hope you're not speaking from
What's
experience
going
there,
on?
Kirsty.
Well, I don't shout them out the window, but people do.
Yeah. No, it's funny. We had a really big truck pull right out in front of us the other day at a junction. He had no business coming out. It was quite busy onto a busy road, and I could see him waiting. It's not like he'd been waiting for ages. At least I don't think so by the time we appeared. But he just had no business pulling right, and it was in front of a learner driver. And I thought, oh, that's really, really mean. And they, of course, had to slam their brakes on, but luckily we were quite aware of this happening. So nothing happened, but just thought he didn't really have an iota of patience. But it's just one of those things you're annoyed. You think you really shouldn't have done that, but just move on. But I know on another day, if I'm stressed, if I'm in a hurry, then it would be a much more irritating deal to contend with
Yeah,
than it actually was that day.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think the truth is we can probably all think of a time we've had probably what seemed like a disproportionate reaction to the thing that's actually happened. And it might even have surprised us.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you don't realize that in the moment. I think obviously in the moment you're consumed by the rage, the upset, the indignation, whatever it might be. It's sometimes only afterwards that you might think, gosh, I really did. That was a strong reaction to something that didn't really warrant it. And we can think about it more rationally afterwards. Because the truth is, in a moment of emotion, logic has kind of left the building and we're, you
Yeah.
know, we're not thinking rationally. So I think we can probably, I think I can speak for most people to say, I think we can probably all think of an example when we've done that.
Yeah. I'm curious about the do we know it's happening at the time? I think that sometimes there is a kind of awareness that there is a little rational voice sort of
Mm.
going, this isn't really that big a deal. What's going on here? But as you say, your emotions are, they're not just on a different page, they're in an entirely different book, aren't they?
Yes,
And
yes, yeah.
and even if you do have that little voice in your head going, "Calm down, dear," at the time, I mean, when does that ever work? When does being told to calm down ever actually calm you down? It just doesn't, does it?
No, I think it's a bit like putting petrol on, isn't it? There's something about calm down, which is almost like putting it's inflammatory, isn't it? I think it just
Yeah,
makes us even more outraged because there's nothing about it that's calming, is it? It's just you feel like you're being, I guess, told off or chastised for the reaction that you've had. So it has the opposite effect. Whereas I don't know if there's something better to say, but maybe something that showed an element of
empathy.
understanding, but kind of diffused it rather than just kind of like lit the match and threw it in there and said, "There, have a go at that."
Yeah, and and if you do have that little voice going on, that little bit of awareness that you are overreacting, I think that makes it worse emotionally. You almost have to commit to the overreaction. You have to justify it and sort of go all in on it. It's not an overreaction because of this, this, and this. I am perfectly within my rights to feel like this. You end up justifying it and, really going all in on that instead of allowing yourself to calm down, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, your defenses go up, so you justify
Yeah.
that reaction, even though deep down you know that's what you're doing, but you're so swept along with it. That's what happens. But
Yes.
why is it we get so wound up like this in the first place? What is actually going on?
What a good question. I think the short and, to be honest, somewhat unhelpful answer would be other stuff. And by that, I mean that the particular thing that might have triggered the reaction is not the cause or is only part of the cause of your little emotional outburst that's happening.
There'll be something about it that was perhaps mildly annoying. So it
Yeah.
could be a little niggle, but it's like, well, the straw that broke the camel's back came to
Yes.
mind for me. Something happened for me not that long ago. It was only a small thing, but I know that it had been on top of a few other things. I just was like, so annoyed. Might have even had a little cry, something about it. And I knew it wasn't
Yeah.
just that one thing, but it was just the total
Yeah.
effect. I think maybe I was quite aware of it though in the moment. So that was interesting. After saying that maybe we're not always aware in the moment, I think maybe because my reaction was more of an upset one, I think maybe I thought, wow, this is a bit surprising that I'm
Mm.
upset over, I don't know what it was, piece of stationery. I don't know. Something very minor,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Stationery is worth getting upset about stationery matters.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you actually sort of referred to this in passing with some of the examples you gave when you said that you were rushing because you were late and or you were stressed or whatever, and it's that kind of thing going on which makes something really quite small become out of proportion in terms of how you're reacting. I mean, I came up with sort of a handful of labels for what might be going on that causes this reaction to something which doesn't really merit it. And the first one was accumulation, which is exactly what you just said, the final straw. So
Yeah.
it's the final straw after a string of minor irritations. I mean, we all know that if big stuff is going on for you, we know that a little thing can cause a disproportionate reaction. If you've just been bereaved, for instance, then a minor upset may well provoke, a huge crying fit. And we all get that and aware of it. But perhaps it's less obvious that when lots of little things have happened, it has the same effect. Especially if you're trying to be sensible and logical about it and say, well, none of these things were significant. They can't possibly be important. But actually, as each little one builds up, when you just have one of those really niggly days, by the end of it, one more niggle and you explode.
Yeah. Well, we talk about small steps adding up when we talk about it in a positive light, don't we? We
Yeah.
talk about all those small baby steps we make will one day lead to that big change. Therefore, I suppose it's only fair to acknowledge that sometimes lots of small, irritating things can have a cumulative impact on
Yeah,
us
that's a
too.
really
That
good point.
individually, not that big a deal, no big shakes, but actually add them all up in one day. I think that's, or whatever time period it might be, but I think it's very
Hmm.
noticeable for when you have them all in one day. You just think, and that's, and we look for things in threes as well, don't we? And I
we,
think if we go
we
past
almost
three,
look
you're like,
for it. Yeah.
what on earth is going on? It's just like no more.
Yeah, and it just it can all build up, and I think there's an element here of thinking that it shouldn't, because all the things are little. You think they shouldn't be having an effect, so it doesn't make sense when that final little thing causes you to explode. That's accumulation, and I think sometimes it's about distraction, that there is something else that's bothering you, but you don't actually feel perhaps ready or able to address that thing. So you end up venting your feelings on other stuff. If
Yeah.
your boss is being a bit of a dick, but you don't know how to have the conversation with them about this in a way that won't prove career limiting, it may well be that you end up shouting at your partner for breathing too loudly later that day. It's something that normally wouldn't bother you in the slightest, but because you're already wound up by something that you don't feel you have control over, that you don't know how to deal with or can't deal with, you take it out on something else. It doesn't take much to tip you over the edge.
Yeah.
But of course, if
I
your
think
partner
that's
has no
such,
idea your boss is being a dick like that, or you're so wound up about it, then this becomes a whole different ball game, doesn't it?
yeah, that's so interesting, that one, because it can so easily happen when we're thinking about tricky relationships. If there is like a dynamic that you're struggling to manage. So, yes, a good example is perhaps with a boss, or could be like an in-law, something like that, where it's tricky, and you can end up
Mm.
pouncing on someone nearer to you, closer to you, who you're kind of perhaps safer with, for just the most
Yes.
minor thing that they've done, and you've like pounced on it because you've got that relationship with them where you do perhaps say more of what you think, but actually it is misdirected. If we're being really honest, it's not them that's warranting your reaction, it's your inability to address it, whatever it might be,
Yeah,
with someone else. But it's a very human thing to do, isn't it? But it's
absolutely.
quite a sad one to realize that we might be doing that, taking it out on someone who really doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, so that's distracting yourself from the real cause of your emotional difficulties. And actually, very similar to that was one that I labeled as scapegoating, which is when you're using a particular irritant becomes the focal point for your difficult feelings. And I said, I think that's very similar to distraction. I think that's without the element of avoiding addressing something. So when it's about distraction, it's you are distracting yourself from what you consciously know is a problem by venting your feelings somewhere else because you don't know how to deal with the other thing. Scapegoating, I mean, the example I came up with this, and I've used two different labels just because it felt different to me when I was thinking about how I react and get myself wound up. So if, for instance, I'm having a really stressful day in the day job and I promise myself, I'm coping with that by promising myself I'm going to leave on time for once, get the earlier bus than usual, and then just get home and chill and have all that time to just relax and it'll be fine. And then the bus that I rushed to get doesn't turn up. So all my frustration and venting is aimed at the bus company, not all the shit that's gone on through the day that actually wound me up at the time. Does that make sense?
Well, it totally does. I was actually thinking, fair enough. I was thinking, well, you can get why you'd be annoyed, because I suppose you've tried to think of something to support yourself to get through the stress of like, I'll have that wind down time, it'll be fine. I'll get home that little bit earlier just so I can decompress. And then that's taken away from you. That is going to be annoying. But I think the point you're making is, it's again, one annoyance. What we've had is a whole load of preceding annoyances that have then resulted in
Yes.
us taking all of the annoyance out on the one thing later on. Like a delayed bus is, if we in our rational minds, we know is not the worst thing in the world. It can be deeply annoying and frustrating, especially if we're trying to be on time for work. It's the other way around, and we think we're going to be late. Whereas actually, is being late home is not quite the same. It's frustrating, and it's impacting our personal time, but it's not
Hmm.
that big a deal
Yeah.
when in isolation.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely overlap here, isn't there, between all these things? I think the scapegoating thing is, made a decision about how to handle a situation which created a huge dependency on something else. And when that didn't work out, then I'm blaming that. That's the problem, not all the other stuff around it, not the way I've chosen to handle it. And the final one is around energy. If you're tired, if you're stressed, you're under the weather, if you're at a low energy point in your daily sort of cycle or your menstrual cycle, that's going to impact how you react to things. And we talked about this, I think, at some length in our episode on doing your best. God, that was back in August last year, 2025. And we said then, we don't have a consistent level of energy. I think that's kind of an unspoken assumption that we do, and maybe we believe we should. But especially for women, our energy levels can be very cyclical and they can fluctuate. And I mean, we react differently to things when we're rested and have high energy levels compared to when we're drained and have low energy levels. It
Yeah,
sounds obvious, but it's easy to
it
forget, right?
does. It really is easy to forget, and I think it's it's easy to forget this for ourselves, but actually also for other people, probably as well. We think
Yes,
a reaction perhaps should be the same from someone, especially when it's something perhaps we're used to, and regardless of how tired or overwhelmed or what else has been going on, which of course we may not have been privy to if it's for someone else. But yet there is obviously for ourselves as well. If we're really tired and you do respond differently, your
yes.
sort of baseline is at a much different place.
Yes, the things that we just sail through on a good day are very different on a bad day, aren't they? And it can wind us up no end. I mean, before we finish, I'm going to run through very quickly a real life example of me getting really wound up over something so minor recently. It's very small. I've been running for the last few years in a pair of leggings that are quite bizarrely a size small, but there you are. In all honesty, they have been getting increasingly snug for a bit. And then recently, the zip on the phone pocket broke. So I went to the same provider online. I checked the sizing. I measured the waist measurement on the old ones. And I ordered new ones in a medium, which I thought gave me a few centimeters extra around the waist. All good. Then they arrived. I couldn't even get them on. They would not go on. Bearing in mind that I was wearing a pair of size small, this made no sense to me at all. And to add insult to injury, I had to pay to return them. I had to pay the postage. So, on a rational level, the old leggings have obviously been stretching with my belly as it expands, and obviously have a lot more give in them than the waist measurement might suggest. The return postage is only a couple of quid. It could all be sorted in a few days, and I only run twice a week anyway, so, it's no biggie, is it? Emotionally, oh, well, this is outrageous. The sizing makes no
I'm
sense. How
I'm
can it
with you.
possibly work like that? There is no way I should have to buy a size large. How dare they make me pay for their incompetence? I was looking forward to running in leggings that don't make me feel like an overstuffed sausage, and now it's all spoiled, and life is so unfair, and I'm so fat, and the universe is conspiring against me, and I hate everyone. Was basically my emotional reaction,
I
which
love how we
looped
went.
for quite some time.
I love how we went from I totally get that, the outrageous, how dare they, they've mismeasured it, all of those things, but to go all the way through to I hate everyone. We're being dramatic or anything, Kirsty.
No, never. But I mean, I hope that people can relate to that, and this is not just me revealing how badly wired I am for life. Um, but what was going on here? I mean, the whole accumulation thing. On the day those leggings arrived, I'd had a really busy, niggly day in the day job, lots of interruptions and frustrations. I'd had to stay for an extra hour to meet a deadline. All that was going on. The whole distraction thing, where there's a bigger issue that I don't feel ready or able to address. Well, there is, it's short staffing at work. It's outside of my control. I can't do anything about that. There's nobody I can take that out on. The scapegoating, well, let's be honest, I wasn't feeling great about the weight gain. and the whole overstuffed sausage feeling with those leggings. So I scapegoated this problem with the sizing to take that out on. And energy, well, it was my first week back in the day job after time off, and I was tired. A perfect storm. And when you look at it like that, it all makes sense.
What I was going to say is
Honest.
you gave us four possible ideas, which I love: the accumulation, distraction, scapegoating, and energy to consider when we have what seems like an over the top reaction. And you've actually identified there you had potentially a bit of all four going on. So to be honest, I think you were entirely justified in having
Thank
your
you.
your rant over the leggings. But as it goes to show, it was a little bit about the leggings, but also not really about the leggings at
Yeah,
all. So
absolutely. And I have to say, after a good night's sleep and calming down a bit without being told to, that there was that sense of why was that such a big deal? But at the time, it felt like the end of the world.
yeah, that's often the way though, isn't it? So we have a question for you all, as we like to end on, which is what last wound you up like this? If you got an example on a par with Kirsty's leggings story, we'd love to hear about it. But which of those explanations do you think might have been at play? What was perhaps going on underneath it? Was there perhaps some accumulation, distraction, scapegoating, or energy issues at play? Or maybe some of all of them? Because
Mm.
chances are one of them or something else was at play. So, and if you have any other thoughts of what it might have been, then do let us know. We would love to hear that,
Yes.
because next week we will be back with some tips, tools, and techniques for perhaps trying to wind ourselves back down again when got all wound up. Perhaps there are some things we can do to try and stop it becoming like a volcano of irritation. Maybe just like a mini eruption rather than a full blown.
Yes, at least a short eruption. And we promise not to say calm down, dear.
Yes. Oh no, that's it's the dear bit at the end that makes it even worse, doesn't it? So we promise that that will not be our advice next week. But stay tuned, and we'll be back for that very soon. Take care. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect. We'd love to hear your thoughts on any of our episodes, especially if you've had a light bulb moment in answering one of the questions, have benefited from one of the tips, or have a suggestion for an episode topic.
And if these conversations have made you curious about how coaching could help you, please don't hesitate to get in touch with one or both of us to find out more about what we offer. Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.